Hello everyone, this is the backup recording of our previous session, which was somehow not got recorded due to an interruption in the middle. So let me continue from here and complete this component.js chapter. So what we have done, this is the standard dependency on UI component which we had created. And this dependency is now passed as an object to the function over here. This is similar to what we have done already in the controller. If we go to any controller in our previous project, you can see absolutely same thing we have repeated over there. We have created a scaffolding, defined an object over here, and the same object, it was in this case MVC controller, which was passed here to the function. And then we have done an extension of that function standard class of the controller. Similarly, in component.js, the UI component is the standard class over here, whose extension we are actually doing here to create our component.js. Also, if you're confused about the namespace because it looks a little difficult, I will just change it to Spider-Man. Now make sure that this is going to be the address of the file. Like, look, you can take inspiration from controller. You can check here in the controller the namespace dot its complete address was coming. Similarly, in the component.js also, here you have to put the namespace dot complete address. So this is your component definition. I hope this is more clear now. What is the definition? Similar to controller, we have created an inheritance from standard UI class. In this case, the class is SAP UI component class. This is inherited. We're creating an extension, putting the namespace, and make sure the same namespace is given in index.html over here. So I just go back to the index.html file, and here we will just change this to Spider-Man. So everywhere it is same place Spider-Man. I'm going to kill this link, not necessary. Index.html now don't have any code. It doesn't have any code related to your application. Everything will start with component.js. The first section is the metadata section. This is the syntax. I had already put the syntax into the PPT. So when you go back to the PPT, you will already find the syntax already also inside the PPT. Yeah. So then we have this init function. The init function will be used to initialize our component and its properties. It will also helps us to call the base class constructor. So guys, in ABAP programming language, we use super keyword and we use constructor method to call the base class constructor, right? This is what we do in ABAP programming, to call its base class constructor. Here we are not doing ABAP programming. Here we need to use a different syntax offered by JavaScript to call the base class constructor. First question is why we need to call the base class constructor. To call the base class constructor, we have to use a special prototype syntax in JavaScript to be able to achieve that. So for that, we will use sap.ui. The base class name itself, core.ui component. And to call now a base class method, we use prototype dot. The method name is init, because you can see this in this child class also the method name is init. This is the constructor. Similarly, in the base class, there is definitely the init method. And I'll say apply of this. My current class object I'm passing to the base class to initialize and register the base class constructor. So this method interview question, guys, what is this statement is doing? This statement is calling the base class constructor. The purpose is to initialize the superclass objects. So superclass has lots of objects. This standard SAP UI5 class, it has lots of powers, guys. we are just going to get those powers for free. What are all those powers? So one of the power which superclass has, it's called router. In this case, a router object is also initialized, or it's basically activated in base class, and now can be used here. So if you not call this base class constructor, that router object you're not going to get for free. Okay, this is the reason why we are making a call to the base class constructor. Very important line, interview question. What is this line does? It's actually making a call to the base class constructor in which is the UI core component class. Okay, it's making a call to it. That's it. This is the only complicated part of designing a component.js. If you have understood this, there is no other problem you will face. There's no difficulty. More or less, this is like standard syntax of creating component.js. More or less, it's just like syntax, guys. You can use this syntax as it is. You don't have to change anything in this syntax at all. Okay, so I will take this syntax and I'll put it the syntax in the PPT, so you can refer this. So you can see syntax for creating component.js. Put the SAP UI define, put the superclass, which is a standard SAP UI component class, inherit from there, and then create an extension of that inheritance, and then put the address of your own component inside the double quotes, and then put these four sections as it is. And then inside the init function, call the base class constructor using the prototype option. So call the base class constructor using that option. Okay, that's what you can do. That's the syntax, guys. You can use the syntax in any SAP UI5 Fiori application in future. Till today, till you create any Fiori app in future, you can use as it is, this to create component.js. I hope it's clear. So what system now does, the moment you start your application, we will be writing some code later on in index.html which will invoke this component.js. This component.js is then going to create an instance of the base class constructor, register itself with the base class so that you can get ready-made powers, and then it's going to call the app object. Okay, what is app object? It's your view. So basically, if you go back to the previous slide, what we have learned in last class, we have told that we will be having this new project structure like this. So we have a component.js. This component.js is now going to invoke an app.view.xml. So let's go ahead and create this app.view.xml. And watch out, this app.view.xml has something called a container control. So we will be adding also a container control when we are creating this app view XML. You can create it manually step by step like we did in last classes. You can also now make use of web IDE feature to do so. Let's go back to web IDE. Right click on your web app folder, click on new, and choose here SAP UI5 view. And now let's go ahead and create an app view. The view name can be anything, but as we are following standard best practices, we should make sure that view name is app. Okay, we need to follow a lot of standards, guys. You can go ahead and create a college like project, but that will be rejected before even it reaches to production by your architect. So make sure that we doing a lot of these stuff. This is all just because we want to follow standard Fiori design guidelines and make sure that our app is robust to be used in production and looks like a standard SAP UI5 application. This is why we are doing all these things step by step. So let's create an app view. It's going to be XML view, and you see the namespace already picked up as Spider-Man. Click on next and finish. So now you'll see a view folder and a controller folder gets created for us. You see it's created over here, and now you can go inside. You see it has got a view now created with the standard, and now you see this has got a container control, app container control. This is called a container control. How do you know it's a container control? You can go to SAP UI5 SDK and refer the documentation for this. So you can remove this, no problem. This is your app view. Inside that we had added an app container control, guys. Okay, this is what we have done. Let me give some ID to this. ID equals to my app. Yeah, that's the ID I've given. You can go to UI5 SDK and check the documentation for this gentleman now on UI5 SDK. So go to UI5 SDK, search for the app, and now You can see this is the app control, and see the parent class is nav container. If this is the parent class for any control, which means that control is going to be acting like a container control. Why we're calling container? Container is something which contains inside, right? Which contains something inside. So this is a container control. Later point of time, we will be containing views inside this container control. We will be adding views. So all the views which you will be creating, they will be all part of this container control. This is the reason it's container control. We give an ID, we just leave it as it is, this view, and save this. Nothing exceptional. You can also observe that controller is automatically created. Spiderman.controller.app. The namespace has been picked up automatically, and everything is generated nicely. So now it's time to create this view object. So earlier we used to create the view object inside our index HTML, right? We are saying that we are now going to kill this dependency completely, and everything should be driven by component.js. So component.js is the one who is creating now the object of app view. It's not the index.html. Index.html is only used for testing the component.js. Component.js is going to be creating this app view object. Now this app view has a container control, and inside this container you're going to bring these views later point of time. So let's go ahead and create the object of this app view. Now we have defined the app view, and now we come to component.js, and in the create content method I'm going to create the app view object. It's the same code, similar code what we had in index.html, which we deleted. Now we are going to bring that code over here, because component.js is the starting point, is the launching point for your app. This is the driver of your application. So let's create var o view, new SAP UI view. We're going to add this view, and we will put the view name. We will be putting the ID of the view. So let me just put the ID of the view name, and then the view type. View type, of course, we have XML, capital, and here we'll give ID app, and we'll be putting the address is Spiderman web app folder dot view folder dot app is the view name. So that's all we have done. We've created our view object, and this view object now finally we're going to return out. So let's do that. So I will say return my o view object out. That's what exactly we are doing. Okay, it's giving an error over here because I missed out a comma. Nice. So that's the driver of your functionality. Yeah, so again, once again, a quick repeat. We have created a component.js. This is going to, again, any JS file starts with scaffolding template. We have done that. We have inherited from standard UI component class. This UI component class object is passed here, and we are doing extension of this like we did in the controllers earlier. You see the same thing we did in controller. We created a UI scaffolding. Then we have used the MVC controller base class, pass that object over here, and then extended it. Absolutely same thing, is just that the base class is different now, which is component relevant base class. It's called UI component. Give the address of your component file. Make sure the file name is component C capital. Very important, component.js. You can't keep any other name. Metadata section right now I'm leaving empty. Later on we will fill this. Init function creates the base class, calls the base class constructor. Like in ABAP we use super keyword. Here we are using SAP UI base class object name dot prototype to call the base class init function, passing the current object to it to initialize. And then we have a create content function which creates the object of the view and returns the object of the view. Nice. And now it's time to test it. So to test this, now we need index.html. We can't run component.js directly over here. There's no possibility to run component.js here. You can only run in HTML file with web ID at this point. So this is the reason we go to index.html, and now we will create an instance of this component.js and just display that on the UI. So for that reason, we use a standard SAP delivered object called component container. What is component container? Look at the name, component container, which means it's going to contain what? It's a container of what? It's a container of what? It's a container of component, right? It's a container which contains a component inside. So we will be creating an object of component container for local testing of our component JS. Ultimately, when this app gets deployed to SAP ABAP system, this is the driver. Launchpad will call this gentleman. Launchpad will not care about index HTML. Launchpad will start your app from here. This is the reason your view instance creation is also moved inside the component only. If you would put any code in index HTML, it will not be executed by Launchpad, right? So right now for local testing, we need to test this component. So for that, we will create a component container object. So let's do that. Var ocomp container equals to new SAP UI core component container. That's my object which we're creating. And let me give a name to this, and you just have to give namespace. Spider-Man is your namespace, and let's put this in the DOM com container dot place at in the DOM, please, the content body of HTML. So this is a component container. What it will do, we have given it the path, the address of the main folder. So it will go to the web app folder here. In this web app folder, it will search, it will do a kind of lookup, and it will look forward for what? It is looking forward only for a component because it's a component container. It will look forward for a component.js file. There you go, it finds it. It creates the object of component.js, initializes its base class, creates the view object and returns the view object out, and that goes inside component container and it goes in the body of HTML. So this is the flow. Now we have connected, rather than calling directly the view, we have got in the middle a component container, a component JS, and then that is creating an app view object, which is the starting launching point of your application. You can see this is now we've got in this structure. This is the reason why I asked you guys, everyone, to go ahead and read about this in the last class, because component.js is the heart of your application now. And now from here, it's called the appview.xml. The appview.xml has a container control called app control, and that has further the view creation, which we'll do later. But right now, let's focus here only these two entities. As a result of that, let's execute this application now. So I'm going to go back and execute this app. So you see your proper structure of the application. Let's run this app. So I will execute this, and you see it's empty. Don't panic by looking at empty. Look at the DOM. Press F12. Let's look at the DOM. DOM will give you the right guidance whether everything is created. So now you see you have got the content of the HTML. Inside that, it has got a container control, component container control. That component container has got a container itself. This container has got an app view, and this app view has got an app object, the container object. Are you clear with the DOM, guys? How the system is designed? Though end user don't see right now anything, we have done a lot of stuff behind the scene to just fulfill the standard need. Guys, you can build a project without doing these things. It will also bring the output like it was doing earlier, but your app will be rejected to go to production. Your architect, if the architect is smart enough, if your Fury architect is smart enough in your team, or if nobody has knowledge, then you are on your own. You can do anything what you want. But later point of time, if your app goes under a review, or let's say your company do a tie up with a partner, and that partner comes for review, they will reject your app because you don't have component JS. And the second largest, the major reason why your app doesn't work with Launchpad is you have no component JS in your application. So this is the reason, just to follow Fury guidelines, Fury standard, we are doing all this, guys. Very, very important for all of you to remember these important things. Okay, very important. So now you can imagine the right structure of the app is here, and right now we have not putting anything in the app view. Okay, we just created the app view, we created this view, we created this controller, we created component.js, and they are all working in synchronization. The DOM is the evidence for that, right? Your DOM is the evidence for that. So now what we'll do next is we will just run this. We have executed and we got this result, right? So now time for an exercise for all of you. What you guys have to do, you have to explore the documentation for app control. Okay, app control, which is here. You see, this is the app control we added. Okay, don't confuse, the name is, view name is also app, and the container control is also app. Don't confuse between these two. This is a view and this is a control in SAP UI5 library, right? So explore the documentation of this app control, because all the other views are going to come and sit inside this. Yeah, so explore the documentation of this container control, this app control. Create a new view called view1. So you have to add a view1 here in the view folder, controller folder, according to its controller, and add a simple button inside that new view. So add a new view, you can do that, right click, say new, add a view. Inside that new view, view1, add a button control, and then you have to plug. How do you plug the newly created? So imagine you created a view. Now you have to bring that view inside this app control, and then when I run, you should see a button on the UI. Right now the button has nothing. You should see a button on the UI. That is what my expectation from this example. Clear, everyone? So hope you enjoyed today's class. For any questions, please feel free to drop an email. In the next session, we will discuss more. This project I'm uploading in the blog. You can download and check this out. So we created just a component JS. You can also manually create the view. There is no hard rule that you have to use this. Since that we have learned creating view in the past already, we have just created it from the wizard. But you can manually create this controller. It's the same thing. You can see it's inheriting from controller class, then namespace, its complete namespace, its address, and then those init exit functions. So everything is created automatically. We're just then creating an object of it and returning that out of create content method of component.js. Clear, everyone? So that's the syntax. You can use as it is. There's nothing to understand here. It's just hard coded syntax. You can use as it is. Just put your the syntax, put your address, and then put this initialization of base class, and then create content of your view object. Okay, and now moving to the exercise which was given last class for deletion of table record. So I've already finished that. So you see, this is our table. The requirement was, Anubhav, how can you go ahead and delete a record on click of the delete button? So how do we do that? So let's come back. This is my UI5 project, the last example, last project. We coincide and we'll see how to do deletion. So first of all, we'll add a column. Click on this. Let's give the name Kiki. Everybody knows Kiki challenge. Kiki. Okay, so let's add a Kiki column, and now let's see, have a delete button. And what should happen on click of this delete button? We should delete the record. The record. So how the DOM is built? In this case, watch out, watch out. So you have a button. That button is surrounded by a cell. The cell is surrounded by the row. That's your DOM structure, guys. This is why the DOM is so important. And this row is surrounded by a table, and this table is surrounded by the view, right? Are you clear? The DOM structure, the level of hierarchy, the tree DOM structure. You have a view has a table has rows, row has a cell has a button. So what will be the algorithm to delete the record? When you click on this delete button, what should happen? On click of this delete button, you will get an event object. Which event object you will get? You will get the event object of the element on which you pressed. So you press the delete button, you press the delete button on here. So you are going to get object of this delete button only. If you bow a tree for mango, you're not going to get a strawberry, of course. So if you bow a tree of a strawberry, you're going to get a strawberry only, not mangoes. Similarly, when you click on the button, the event object dot get source, okay, so you will call get source. The get source will give you the object of this button only, right? And then this button has a parent. Who is the parent? This is cell. So you'll say get parent will give you the cell object. Again, you do get parent will give you the row object. So you'll reach to the row level, right? After reaching to the row level, you can get the index of the row. easily. You can get the address of this row. From that address you can extract the index. So address of the row will be slash emp tab slash 1, right? Because it's second row 0 1. So that this is what you get. You split and get this index out. Okay, and then you can do one thing. You can use the JSON model. From the model you get the item, first item, delete that first item and set this employee table back into the model. As a result of that, this record will be deleted. So let me show you. I've already written the code for you. So I go back, and first of all, I'll show you how it works. So let's click on delete on Jessica. You see Jessica got deleted. So I can likewise delete any record of my choice. You see it's getting deleted. I can empty the table accordingly. So what I'll do is I will go back. I'll just show you the code where I've done it. So I can come back, go to the view, go to the controller first. Where are we adding the dynamic column? So we are adding that dynamic column here. You see we are adding it. So I have added an action now. So whenever user press on delete button, this is what should happen. And I hope you all understand why I use bracket to pass the current controller object as this pointer to this event handler. Though we don't need it, it's a good practice to use like this. Let's come to call delete. In the call delete here, you see we have first got the get source. This get source will give you the object of delete button. Get the object of button on which click was performed. It was of course your delete button inside cell, and the cell is inside row, and the row is inside table, right? That's what we've done. Now after this is done, we have got the parent. So when we get parent of the button, we get cell. When we get cell of the parent of the cell, we get row, correct? We get the row. So you see, get parent, this piece of code is giving you the cell. Again, get parent, it's a chaining in JavaScript. This will give you the row object. So we got the row object. After we got the row object, from the row object, get the path of the row. So we'll get like slash emp tab slash index. That's what you're gonna get. So we will split and extract the index. Okay, we have got the delete index here, and after that just parse this as an integer, because you're going to get a string, and on string it won't work, so we have to convert that string to number. And once that is done, what we do is we will just get the model object. From the model we got the employee table, which is bounded to the UI table, and then delete splice function I taught you in the array to delete an item. We deleted that item, one item after that I've deleted with the delete index, and then set the data back to the model for table. Since it's a two-way binding, the data is going to pump back to the UI. As a result of that, you're going to see the deletion takes place on the UI. Clear, everyone? This is the flow diagram. I'm going to put this code also onto the blog. You all can download and check this. So you have to follow the rules of the game. If you just understand the concept, you can build any example. Yeah, any example you can build it. Just follow the concept and then example can be built. So now I click, it gets the parent, which is row. From row it gets the index, and then it deletes the data from employee table index, and then set the data back, where as a result of that record is gone from the UI. So that's what was the exercise. That's what was the doubt which some of you have asked me. So this is how we solved it. Thank you so much. With that, it's a wrap on today's class. See you tomorrow. Have a nice day. Goodbye.